Hello all. This program is about transaction management, which have the payer, payee, and the amount as inputs, and to calculate the total amount received by each payee. So this is the input data, and the output should be the total amount received by each payee. And then how we have to do that? So that also given by use the grouping and summing concept. So if we are going to use this grouping and summing concept, in default, we have to go for static values. So if I'm going for static values, then if I'm going to group it, grouping and summing, I have to go for static, and then I have to go for collectors also. And of course, as I have to combine all these values, I have to use map also. So from this word, I can just go through whatever parameters I have to include in it. Only for giving the data, I can use a list and arrays as list. After that, for using this grouping and summing, I have to use collectors, and I have to initiate the parameters by using static, and then I have to use map also. So all these things can be understood by seeing the keywords which are given in the question. So now I have to give the inputs as payer, payee, and amount. So before giving this input, I will be initiating the class called static, because for summing and grouping concepts, I have to give static always. So here I'm using the static class first, and here static class transaction, and if it is going to be a static class, then it is moreover equal to a private value. So it can be given as only private values, and we have to make it as public again by initiating this class. So I'm giving static class transaction and giving the name as transaction, and in private, the payer and payee is a string. So they're all private only, and the amount is also I'm giving as a double. And then again public transaction, so all these will be initiated here, and then I have to make each and every data type as a separate public value. So I'm using public string get payer, and then again get payee, then get amount. So for this also I'm using return amount. So return payee, return payer I have to use, as because if I'm going to use a static class, so this should be the procedure. And after that, I am going for giving the input in the parameters, or the way where the variables which I have initiated. Now, how I'm going to give the input is by using list. So after giving the list, I'm giving the transaction as this is nothing but the class name, static class which we have initiated here. So I have initiated the transaction class name as a transaction, and therefore I'm giving here as transaction, and the object name is called transactions, which is equal to arrays.asList, and I'm giving as a new transaction, the name, that is the payer, payee, and the amount. So only three names I have taken: Alice, Bob, and Charlie, and the amounts can be transacted between these two peoples. So I have shown some transactions here. So now I have to calculate the amount received by each payee. So for that, I have to use, so for each and every payee, if I'm going to throw it, I have to go through all these values. So as I have to go through all these values, first I have to map all these values. So which value belongs to, so Alice and Bob with 100, Bob and Alice with 50. So all these payer, payee, and the values has to be mapped together, and then only the total amount can be calculated. So for that total amount to be calculated, so that is wherever the name of Alice is present, it has to calculate. Wherever it is having the payee name, then it has to collect, and then it has to add it. And wherever the name of the Bob is present in payee list, then it has to collect the name, and then it has to add the amount. So I have to give the conditions, but I cannot give here stream or filter. So the condition is to use only grouping and summing. So for grouping, what I have to do is I have to group the payee first. So I have to group the payee, and then only I can add the total amount here. So for grouping the payee, I have to use grouping by, and for adding the amount, I have to use summing. So summing can be of three types, that is summing int, summing long, summing double. So all these are for describing the data type which we have used. So here the summing here we have initiated in the class. Um, so here we have initiated in the class as a double. The amount is initiated with the data type as double. Therefore, here we are using summing double for the transaction. So here we are initiating map string double. So because the output should be with the payee name. So how it should be displayed is with the payee name, and then double is nothing but the amount which is summed up, the total amount. So this is how it should get and display. So total amount by payee. So this is an object name which we have initiated for map, and the transactions where it has to take the listing values. So the transaction dot string. So it has to go through all the values dot collect collectors dot grouping by the transaction value colon, that is up to get payee. So which has to be grouped, the value of payee has to be grouped. So for that we have to put two colons, and then again we have to use collectors for that. Why? For summing. For summing we have to use so summing double, and then transaction again for colon double colons, and then get amount. So here we have to use get payee, and here we have to use get amount. As because already we have said that we have to use a static for these collected types. So we have initiated already, it is as a static. So we are not mentioning here as static. And then, so this is for the calculating the total amount received by each every payee. And then printing. For printing, we have to use system.out.println total amount received by each payee. But what we have to do is it has to go through from the top to last. So for that, we have to initiate a variable name. So for that, we have initiated the name called payee with the total amount. So up to the total amount is what is the total amount, that is going to be the last amount. And then system dot out println. So payee is the central one with the total value, whatever we have got is the total amount. So payee is the name, and then total amount will be displayed here. So this is the initially whatever we have used the class. So now, so we have used the grouping using grouping by, and summing by summing double, and it can be used summing in, summing long also can be used depending upon the data type, and we have to use a static class for this, and we have to use collectors for this. And if in case I'm using collect here, this collectors dot grouping by, we have to initiate a bracket here, and of course, another collectors also we have to use for summing. So I have initiated everything in a single braces. So we have closed here for calculating the total amount. And for displaying, I have to use for each loop. It has to go through from the top to the bottom, and name a variable called payee, comma total amount. This total amount is to go through the all the values, and then it will be displaying this particular payee and the total amount as the original output. And here I'm using the map name. So what is the map name here? Total amount by payee, because already we have imported the list values here. So the transactions listed here, and sorry, imported here. And after importing the object name here, we are using the map here for printing out. That is for displaying. So total amount by payee is the name of the map, and for each. So in that we have already calculated the payee and the total amount. So the payee and the total amount is initiated like a variable, and now here it will be displayed whatever it is calculated here. So let us check for the output. In general, if we see manually, we can see in this Alice and Bob and Charlie. So here the Alice is having about 250, and then Bob is having about 150, and then Charlie is 75. So they should be displayed like this. So Bob is about 150, Alice is 250, and Charlie is 75. So the payees list with the amount has to be displayed like this. So let us check whether we are getting the output. So the total amount received by each payee is Bob 150, Alice 250, and then Charlie 750, 75. So this is how we receive this out. Thank you.